Okay, it's day 109. This is part 3. And I just did the response for Kim Fritz of Uranium One, the Podesta Group, and also ARMZ. And I've got mixed feelings about responding to Kim because she's really standing in for John Podesta. John Podesta, the chairman of the Podesta Group, the guy who benefited from the pay-to-play, the guy who knew about, if not directed, Hume Abedin to give the password to Suschin, the person who knew that Suschin would know the travel routes of Uranium One, and before that even, of the travel routes of megatons to megawatts in the United States. So would have an intimate knowledge of the Uranium One operation against ranchers and farmers in the West, as well as have a interdiction strategy for highly enriched uranium coming from Russia. For me, this story started about this time, about a year after this, when the Snowden disclosures happened. But I remember this interchange with Bob Mueller and Inspector Clapper, or Director Clapper, him asking, can you geolocate someone, and what do you need? Do you need a warrant to do FISA? And here is the responses.
As I said, Senator Wyden, in the case of CIA and NSA, who were engaged in foreign intelligence collection, that's a practice they do not engage in.
Director Mueller.
Well, Senator, you're talking, well, let me start by saying that there's no real distinction in what we do between the criminal and the national security. If we require it in criminal side, we require national security, and we treat them the same. There is no distinction between our intelligence cases in terms of undertaking the activity you suggest and our criminal cases. That being said, in the wake of the Jones decision, which I'm sure you're familiar with, that is put some things in an area where we're waiting to see where the courts go. Quite obviously, they said if you were going to trespass to install a device, then that requires a warrant. The standard on that warrant is still up in the air. And consequently, to give you a more precise answer to a particular question on a particular monitoring, I would have to be more factually based and then apply the law to that particular set of facts.
Director Mueller, you have identified the exact reason why I'm trying to get an answer from Director Clapper, because there's no question we are going to watch what the courts do in the days ahead. The question is, what will be the rights of Americans while that is still being fleshed out? And the fact is, FISA does not specify whether a warrant is required. And I know I'm out of time for this round. I just want you to know, Director Clapper, respectfully, I will be asking this question of you, just like we did with respect to the legal documents for targeted killings, which we finally got after 7 requests over a 2-year period, until we get an answer, because I think Americans are entitled to a direct answer to that question. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Would you like Director Mueller to respond? I think it would be helpful.
Madam Chair, I think the director did, and he gave a very thoughtful answer, which is that the courts are still wrestling with the various interpretations of it. I think that is a correct answer by Director Mueller, but we still have the question remaining, what are the rights of Americans as of today while the courts are wrestling with this, and that is the matter we have not gotten an answer to. I thank you, and just for you, Director Clapper, again on the surveillance front, and I hope we can do this in just a yes or no answer, because I know Senator Feinstein wants to move on. Last summer, the NSA director was at a conference, and he was asked a question about the NSA surveillance of Americans. He replied, and I quote here, "The story that we have millions or hundreds of millions of dossiers on people is completely false." The reason I'm asking the question is, having served on the committee now for a dozen years, I don't really know what a dossier is in this context. So what I wanted to see is if you could give me a yes or no answer to the question, does the NSA collect any type of data at all on millions or hundreds of millions of Americans?
No, sir.
It does not.
Not wittingly. There are cases where they could inadvertently, perhaps, collect, but not wittingly.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, there you have it. So I think most people have not heard Bob Mueller in front of an audience. So I put a little bit of extra in there for Bob Mueller. But a year after this, the Snowden thing happens, and that's really, I was kind of out front, very vocal and so forth when the Snowden thing happened because I knew that this was a direct lie. And Snowden was motivated by the fact he knew Director Clapper was lying. It wasn't just a million people with a million files or 100 million people with 100 million files. There was also this dossier process where people were making comments about the dossier and doing analysis and adding all kinds of innuendo, exactly like the PP dossier, exactly like the PP dossier, all of the sorts of unverified facts, trying to make you look like a child molester, trying to make you look like a date rapist, trying to make you look like a kidnapper, trying to make you look like a drug addict, etc. So this really comes to a head here about a year ago when I saw this film, and it changed me. It made me want to go on the road because I felt like this uranium-1, I felt like the stealing of the election was really about covering up uranium-1. And if you haven't seen it, here it is.
You understand? I'm going to go meet the sheriff. You back down or you kill me now. Go ahead. Put the bullet through me. I don't care.
Gordon Smith stated that he wants to protect old growth forests and pristine wilderness, including the Wilderness Road.
And actually, are they actually doing that? If they're actually doing that, then why in the world did they give all these to over 200 mining companies through Harney County, Mount Henry County, and Baker County? And right here with the Senate Bill 113, it says they're environmental and radioactive to our environment when they extract these minerals. I didn't say that, that's what the bill says. So are they actually protecting our resource, our natural resource, or they're actually stealing our minerals and our land and our water?
Okay, we're here.
Go ahead and shoot me!
Damn! Trying to. Stay down, stay down, stay down. Stay down. Stay down. Damn it. Are they shooting him? Did I shoot him? You asshole. Oh my God! Okay. Stay down.
And I think if you remember those first two shots that rang out, that was an FBI agent that did that. Andrew McCabe was the FBI director at this point, and he shot two shots trying to entice the FBI, trying to get the Oregon State Police to begin the shower of shots. And he was indicted later on. The FBI agent hid his weapon. He lied to his superiors for 2 weeks. Andrew McCabe helped him cover this up. And it resolved in a case where, the people that were involved in this were painted as just the most, crazy Ruby Ridge people. I don't know if that's because Terry Bean of Bean Bean LLC, which is partnered with with Fusion GPS and Tom Simpson, was just doing yet another hit job on local ranchers when they were getting their land stolen, and they're reacting to getting their land stolen. But even the state police backed away from this and had said, the FBI had lied here, and they were disappointed, and it had smeared law enforcement. And this is what I'm talking about going too far. And I was a victim of this. I had met in May, I believe, at Red Pill. I had met the widow of Lavoy Finicum, and then the parallel construction on me with geolocating me and so forth happened a month later. And at some point in this series, this changes from me just gathering facts and reporting all the great research of the researchers, and then I kind of get into this series as an actor, much like Lavoy Finicum, and it's going to happen in a few days here. I just don't remember when. At this point last year, I'm still talking about how it's congealing into DynCorp being the kind of the operative here. And this whole thing, this whole spy ring, and this whole attack, these media attacks and these dossiers are really about stealing land and stealing resources, and then putting down people who socially protest about it. And it's really goes kind of back to the old Rockefeller days when they were taking over land for the rail lines with the Pinkertons. And so that's the part that I'm a little bit bittersweet about with Kim Fritz, because here John Podesta has put Kim Fritz in this position of having to take the rap for her. But really, when you really boil it all down, nothing has changed here in 150 years as far as the railroad barons trying to take the lands from the farmers and the ranchers. Nothing has changed. Only the people have changed, and only the tactics have changed. And we enjoyed a short period in our country's history where that wasn't the case. But this rise of the CIA and the allowance of the CIA to infiltrate the counterintelligence division of the FBI and take over the FBI by getting rid of most of the old agents that used to know how the Constitution worked and hiring a bunch of new agents that would just do anything that Andy said, and by extension Bob Mueller, that's where we got off track. And this needs to be addressed. This is not a Republican issue. It's not a Democratic issue. Ron Wyden, as a matter of fact, came out the next day after the Republican memo of Nunes came out, and he said, hey, I have a whole bunch of classified info that I would like to release as well. Well, I agree. This is not a Republican or Democratic issue. Let it all out. Let the public change this, because this is the wrong track. This is a banana republic. This is a third world country. This is Russia. And you can see even here on a police chief's face who's getting pressured by the FBI to lie, and he stands up. Now, are we going to have reprisals against this police chief of the Oregon State Police for telling the truth? Or are we going to stand up as Americans and say, hey, something's drastically wrong. Something's drastically wrong here.